to the April 2025 CureJM Town Hall on Resilient Parenting featuring Rhonda Thornton. Rhonda is a licensed professional counselor and parent coach. She's based in Connecticut at the moment, and she's been a great resource to our community here at CureJM. You can find a link to her website and to the Resilient Parenting Toolkit accompanying this video. Now to introduce Rhonda, here is CureJM's mental health coordinator, Suzanne Edison.
Rhonda Thorington is a licensed family counselor and parent coach. She lives in Connecticut. I've been working with her for a couple of years now. She is an amazing presenter, warm, compassionate human being, and she has written this really great guide called the Resilient Parent Toolkit. And we've had Rhonda before come and help talk about how to talk to kids about emotional health, but I've asked Rhonda to really go through this resilient parent toolkit and sort of give us guidelines to it. And then she'll have links to how you can get it for free at the end of her talk. So without further ado, I'm going to ask you to put your questions in the chat, and at the end, when there's a Q&A time, I'm going to facilitate those questions. So feel free to write things down in the chat as Rhonda's talking. And now, Rhonda.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Suzanne. Every time you introduce me, I'm like, oh, who is that she's talking about? Because I'm like, oh, that's not me. I'm just a regular mom. But anyway, thank you guys so very much for having me. Thank you so much for giving up your afternoon or evening to come and talk about, this very important topic. How do we support ourselves and our families in, managing this journey with our medically complex kiddos? So just thank you so much for giving your time. So as Suzanne said, my name's Rhonda Thorington. I am a licensed professional counselor, parent coach, and consultant, and founder of Resilient Parent Consulting. So I'm also a married mom of 3, almost an empty nester, or I read on social media the other day, it said, don't call me an empty nester, call me a bird launcher. So I'm almost a successful bird launcher of 3 kiddos. I have 2 in college right now, and I have a 20-year-old son named Daniel. My 18-year-old daughter, Rhea, is my kiddo with a rare disease, and I have a sassy 15-year-old, 15 going on 25, sophomore in high school. So why are we here today? So we are here so that I can share a collection of resources, some that I sourced from my clinical training as a child and family therapist, some I developed in response to the unique family dynamics and challenges present in parenting a child with medical complexity. I took these things and I packaged them and titled it the Resilient Parent Toolkit. So my goal for today is to share with you an overview of the contents, maybe practice a couple of the exercises if we have time and if my internet cooperates, so that you can experience firsthand, number one, that these strategies really do work, and number two, they don't take a lot of time. The strategies don't take a lot of time, and self-care doesn't have to take a lot of time. So, and at the end of this, as Suzanne said, we're going to make sure that you guys have some links so you can download a free copy of this resource, do a deeper dive into its contents, and utilize all of the strategies in it, and hopefully, prayerfully, as a result, you can feel a little lighter, not because your circumstances have changed, unfortunately, but what will have changed will be in how you approach those circumstances. That will be the shift. So why don't we get into things? So what we're going to cover today, we're going to talk about a little bit about my personal journey in developing the Resilient Parent Toolkit. And then we're going to go do a brief overview of its contents. We are going to look at a section, the quick start section, in which I'll talk about things that you can do, some really quick exercises to find calm in crisis. We're going to talk about a weekly resilience planner. I'm going to go over strategies and how to prepare for medical appointments. So we're going to talk about some self-care on the go and building family resilience. So next, we'll talk about maybe some next steps if you want to explore more individualized support, and we'll do some Q&A. So, as I said, I'm a married mom of 3, and this picture was at my middle daughter's high school graduation last year. This is Rhea, and she's 18. This was a huge, huge milestone for her and for us. She ended up being a valedictorian of her high school class. And it was such a proud mama moment. It was an amazing moment, and it was a hard fought for moment because my daughter has a very rare autoimmune disease. And from 2nd to 5th grade, she was too sick to go to school at all. She was homebound and had tutoring come in with her several times a week. So she went from not being able to go to school at all to being valedictorian of her class. So it was an amazing milestone. And yeah, we were so happy. But it was so much more difficult than we ever anticipated that it would be. This is also my Rhea. You know, this is her at her monthly IVIG infusions, in which I'm sure you guys are all very well acquainted with IVIG. It can be miraculous, but it can also be the devil in terms of the side effects it can cause. So her IVIG infusions are done at an infusion center, which is an hour and a half from our home. And these, because of all the side effects with her IVIG, the infusions take about 8 hours to complete because they have to run it very slowly. And afterwards, because she feels so awful, it takes her several days to recover. And she is a college student now, and she goes to school probably about 40 minutes from the infusion center. So because she feels so awful after her infusions, we make sure that they're done on Fridays, and then she comes home for the weekend to recover. So Rhea has mixed connective tissue disease. She got sick when she was 4 years old. What started out as lots of bruising escalated into swelling and joint pain and lots of other issues. So she got sick at 4. She was diagnosed at 5. She's been seen at multiple children's hospitals, and we actually spent the week at a solid week at the National Institutes of Health when she was around 9 years old. And we spent a lot of time with Dr. Ryder, whom you guys also know really well. And Dr. Ryder and her team helped to provide diagnostic clarification for Rhea and actually helped to put her on the road to so much better improved health with the current course of medications that she's taking. So we spent the week at the National Institutes of Health when her medical team felt that they were missing something diagnostically. And, you know, they were throwing around things like an atypical presentation of leukemia or Crohn's disease or, you know, all kinds of things that were really, really scary. So over the years, Ray has gotten additional diagnoses of polymyositis, Sjogren's syndrome, asthma, Raynaud's phenomenon, idiopathic increased intracranial pressure, that one's a mouthful, and a few others that I won't bore you about. She's been written about in at least one medical journal, and at one point in time, she was the youngest patient in the world to receive a class of medications that combats autoimmune disease by actually killing off a part of the immune system. And her provider, since she was the youngest, her providers had to create a dosing protocol specific to her. And the really cool thing is that they were able to share this dosing protocol with other providers around the country. So she was able, her treatment was able to help other pediatric patients. So that was pretty cool. I know what I'm talking about when I say that I get it. I get the stress and the anxiety and the overwhelm, because I've walked this walk and I'm still walking this walk. So early on in, my caregiving journey, I noticed some things. I noticed that there was a stark difference between the world's perception of me and my own reality. When people saw me, they would say, they would see this confident person, this strong woman, self-sufficient, inspirational. I can't tell you how many times, and I'm sure y'all know what I'm talking about. Oh, you are so strong. You are so capable. I don't know how you do it. Blah, 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 blah. They saw me as this quote unquote superwoman. But my reality was so very different. I was stressed, I was overwhelmed, I was angry, isolated, sad, and just plain exhausted. So I knew that for me, for my own sanity, I had to figure out how to bridge the gap between my own truth and how others saw me. So back in 2011, 2012, what did I do? I did what, we all do. I went to Google, right? When I had, what we all do when we have questions that we can't figure out. And when I researched it, I discovered there was like nothing there. Very little was there. There was like hardly any mention of emotional health and well-being of caregivers who are managing medical complexities in their kiddos. So what I did is I put my therapist hat on and was super intentional about identifying and utilizing strategies to help me specifically and to help my family as a whole. So the Resilient Parent Toolkit was part of that. So now let's get into the sections of the toolkit. The first section of the toolkit I entitled the Quick Start Guide. And in this are 2 exercises that you can do pretty quickly to help you find calm in the moment. Now, the first one, the 5-4-3-2-1 grounding technique, I'm sure most of us have heard of. It's when you look for 5 things you can see. Notice 4 things you can touch. Maybe it's the texture of your clothing or a nearby surface. Listen for 3 sounds. For me, it would be my sound machine outside, the whir of my laptop. Maybe it's distant voices or a ticking clock. Next, identify 2 things you can smell or recall smelling. Maybe it's a comforting scent like fresh laundry or the smell of lavender. And then lastly, find 1 thing you can taste or remember tasting. Maybe it's the taste of coffee. Maybe it's a mint, something like that. Now, the reason why this grounding technique specifically works is it helps to take you out of your anxious thoughts. It takes you from focusing on the internal to focusing on the external. It helps to shift your focus. That's why it works. So this second technique, this one I actually want us to practice, but I'm going to explain it first, and then we're going to watch a video where we're going to follow along and practice it. This is called box breathing. Now, what box breathing is you want to breathe in for a count of 4. You're going to hold it for a count of 4, exhale for a count of 4, and repeat. So I'd like for us to do this exercise together. But before, I want you to kind of check in with yourself right now. See how you're feeling. Are you feeling like completely relaxed? Are you feeling a little stressed from your day? Are you like me? Are you feeling a little nervous? So kind of check in and see where you are right now. Then let's do the exercise. And then I want you to check in with yourself again on the other side of it and see if there's any changes. So, check in with yourself. See how you feel on the other side of this. Do you feel a little calmer? Do you feel a little more at peace? Now, that was just 1 minute, right? So, full disclosure, I use box breathing when I wake up in the middle of the night and can't sleep. I may use box breathing when I'm nervous before doing one of these types of presentations. So, and what I find is when I do like several rounds of box breathing, like at least 4 or 5 rounds, then it really does calm my central nervous system. And fun fact, I mean, I don't know how true this is, but I did read it that box breathing is used by Navy SEALs before they have to go into a task where it requires a lot of focus and attention. So, for whatever it's worth, maybe some box breathing could be helpful. So, the next section that I want to talk about is the weekly resilience planner. So the weekly resilience planner is designed to help you prioritize self-care, set achievable goals, and celebrate successes. What I found and what I'm sure what we all know to be true is that when we make a goal for ourselves, it takes on a greater level of meaning and accountability when we write it down. So, and the the reasoning behind this particular tool is that resilience isn't built overnight, right? But it's through small intentional steps. So we have a self-care goal, a family goal. A family goal can be to focus on one thing that week in your family that fosters connection. Like maybe that one family goal might be to have a weekly movie night, a family movie night with each other. Maybe it's like having a special meal together. So a self-care goal might be making the commitment to yourself that, okay, every night, but when I go to sleep, I'm going to do 4 rounds of box breathing. So maybe that's your self-care goal. So the next section of the weekly resilience planner are daily wins. Now, the reason that I included this is because tracking small wins helps to shift our focus toward gratitude. When we are in the thick of it, the day to day, with all of the stuff that comes with, medical appointments and, all of the stressors that come with parenting a medically complex kiddo, it this can help us to recognize those small wins. Now, this was born out of something that I did when I would work with parents that have kids with really extreme behavioral responses. So I would encourage parents to write down the smallest positive thing that their kid did. If your kid, and if you ask them to pick up their shoes and they only cursed you out instead of throwing everything around the room, we're going to count that as a win, and I want you to write it down. And what I found is that when parents were able to do that, it helped shift things a little bit. They were able to recognize that, okay, 100% of my life isn't doom and gloom. I have some glimmers of brightness and hope. And that helped to shift things, to shift their perspective a little bit. So the next section of the weekly resilience planner is an end of the week reflection. So at the end of each week, you want to sit back and say, okay, what am I proud of this week? And again, it doesn't have to be anything big. It could be something really, really small. I know for me, there were weeks when, I would be proud of the fact that I don't know, that I cooked dinner 2 nights out of the week and we didn't eat takeout every night. Or, and then also looking at what can I adjust? Like this past week, we were ripping and roaring too much. What can I adjust for next week? What can I do differently? So you're constantly looking at things that you are proud of, looking for those glimmers, the positive things, and then you're looking at things that you can adjust. So the next section of the toolkit is the medical appointment checklist. So what I found in going to probably several hundred medical appointments for my daughter by this point, probably 1,000 up to this point, is I found a way to organize myself for her appointments that gave me structure and helped to reduce my stress. And, like you guys, when you think about all of the specialists that you have to see, at one point, my daughter was seeing a nephrologist, a neuro-ophthalmologist, a neuroimmunologist, rheumatologist, and a pulmonologist, and I think that's everyone. Oh, and plus, her regular pediatrician. So that's 6 specialists that she was seeing at any given time. So what I did is I started keeping everything in one notebook. And so I had a notebook before her appointments, and I used one of these good old-fashioned composition notebooks, the kind that at the beginning of the school year you can buy for like 25 cents a clip at an office supply store. I would buy bunches of these, and I would have a backpack, and in it I would put my composition notebook, and I would put a binder with all of her lab results, and those things lived in that medical backpack. And that's how I kept track of everything. So, today, you could use, a composition notebook, you could use a binder, you can use an accordion folder, you can use a notes app on your phone. I think the best thing ever is the fact that now we have My Chart, so you don't have to print out pages and pages and pages of lab results. You can just pull it up on your phone to keep track of medical records. So anyhow, I digress a little bit. So prior to the appointment, what I would do is I would write down all of my questions. And the reason that I would do that is because in the appointment, my mind would go blank. Doctors were kind of throwing all kinds of terms at me and treatment plans, and I just couldn't remember everything. So I wrote everything down ahead of time. So, and before the appointment, I would also review her medical history. If there were labs that came out, reports that were written, if there were, treatments or test results that were done, I would review that. And most of the time I would end up with lots more questions. And so I would add that to the notebook as well. During the appointment, I would also take notes. I would write down key info like medical terms that I might not have understood so that I needed to look up later, recommendations, treatment recommendations, or follow-up instructions. I wrote all of those things down during the appointment. And what I found is that it was twofold, two benefits to that. One was I didn't have to worry about having to recall something after the appointment and thinking, oh my gosh, I forgot to, do this or I forgot to do that. No, it's all written down so you can get it out of your head onto paper. And number two, that communicates the level to your provider, the level of seriousness with which you're taking your child's treatment. And it holds them accountable in a way that perhaps you wouldn't be able to hold them accountable otherwise. There were many situations where, I would have a discussion with one of my daughter's specialists, and then we go back and like they might make a treatment recommendation and we talk about it and decide against it. And then 3 or 4 months later, they would revisit the same treatment recommendations, and I would go back in my notes and I'd be like, no, on this date you said X, Y, and Z. And they'd be like, oh yeah, that's right. So writing it down really helps to hold everybody accountable. So also during the appointment, you want to ask clarifying questions. It's okay to ask for a simpler explanation if you don't understand something. None of us went to medical school. Maybe some of us did, but most of us have not gone to medical school, and most of us are probably not pediatric rheumatologists, even if we did go to medical school. So it is okay to ask for clarification if you don't understand something. For example, so doctor, what does this mean for us day to day, this particular treatment? What are the side effects? Help me understand what you're saying. I'm not quite getting what you're saying. Can you please break it down in simpler terms for me? So, next, during the appointment, you want to confirm follow-up needs. Follow-up needs, timelines, treatments, test results, your next appointment. You want to be clear about that during the appointment. So before you leave, you're asking the doctor, okay, when do you want to see, my child back again? So, and they're saying, oh, we want to see your child back, in 2 months, in 3 months, next month. And then you're leaving that exam room and you're stopping right at the front desk to make that next appointment. So, and the reason you want to do that is because then that's one less thing you have to worry about later. I swear, every time I have not stopped by that front desk because the line was too long or people were on the phone and I didn't feel like waiting, I've always forgotten to make that follow-up appointment. When I was reviewing this presentation today, I remembered that I gotta make my daughter's neuro-ophthalmology appointment. For that same reason, I left and didn't make the follow-up, and now I've got to make a phone call and try to get her squeezed in because she's due for her next follow-up. So here's another tip to take care of during or just before your appointment is see if you can get labs done the same day that they're ordered. Again, that's one less thing on your list if you can get it done that day. And if you have the luxury of being at, a large hospital, a large children's hospital, you most likely would be able to go to the lab at the hospital and get the labs drawn. An even better strategy is to see if you can get the labs done just before your child's appointment. Because then if the results are in, or most of the results are in before the appointment, then you can have a more informed discussion. So after the appointment. So what I would do after my daughter's appointment is I would review and organize my notes, because during the appointment, I'm scribbling things down. I'm, taking notes feverishly. So after, I would review my notes, I would rewrite things if I needed to. And ideally, this would be done within 24 hours of the appointment while things are still fresh in your mind, because you can kind of think about, what happened during the appointment, what kinds of things were said, and, you can just make adjustments in your notes as needed. I typically would, right when I would get home, I would take some time and do that. But there were times when, especially after my daughter had a more difficult or challenging appointment, that I would just have to put my medical backpack away, and I would have to take a step away for a couple of days, because I just needed to take care of myself emotionally, because the information we got during that particular appointment was not great. So when that would happen, I would take a step away for a couple of days, and then I would come back to it and organize my notes. Schedule follow-up needs after the appointment. If you could not do it directly after the appointment, you want to schedule any follow-up sometime within the first few days after your appointment, and also communicate with caregivers. For me and my husband, we had to divide and conquer. So I was the one with the more flexible schedule. So I did the lion's share of the appointments. He was unable to, the type of work that he does, there's not as much flexibility. So I would go to the appointment and then I would download him on everything, like usually that evening. And then lastly, and this is equally important as everything else that I've said, is reflect on the appointment. Spend some time, some moments in reflection. How did you feel, in the appointment? How did you feel about the information that was relayed to you? How did you feel about the way that that the information was relayed? Did you feel heard by your provider? Did you feel validated and respected by your provider? How did your provider communicate with your child? That's vitally important as well. And really kind of reflect on that, and just think about your experience with that. So the next section of the toolkit I entitled Self-Care on the Go. Now, there were 5 different strategies that I go over, which we're not going to go over all of these today. Most of these we're well aware of, but I want to pick out 2 and just talk really briefly. One would be the gratitude pause. And we had talked about that earlier. When we can focus on things that we are grateful for, it can shift our perspective from one of lack to one of abundance. And it may seem like a little thing, but it's a big thing. When we can shift our perspective ever so slightly, that can really help us in managing the seemingly unmanageable. So, what does a gratitude pause look like? For me, it's when I wake up every morning, I think of 3 things that I'm grateful for. And it doesn't have to be anything big. Some mornings it's the sunrise, or a really great cup of coffee. And get if they have made it just right, I go, oh my goodness, I'm so thankful for this. When my daughter was at her sickest, there were days when I was grateful for not having an inpatient hospitalization, because anytime we went to the hospital, there was a risk that she was going to be admitted. So I was thankful over Christmas. She ended up getting COVID, and she and I were able to talk those doctors into not admitting her to the hospital. So that was a win. So just being, focusing on that gratitude can really help create a significant shift. But the other exercise I want to point out really quickly is called the 5-minute vacation. And this is a relaxation technique. And we're all aware of how traumatic memories or triggers can cause our bodies to feel as if we're re-experiencing the traumatic event, right? I mean, that's what post-traumatic stress disorder is. Well, the same is also true for happy, calming, and relaxing memories. So I want you to take a moment to think about a place where you felt at peace. And if comfortable, I'm going to ask you to either close your eyes or just look down and picture yourself at that place. Take a deep breath in and exhale. Now I want you to immerse yourself in that memory. Now, what do you see when you look around in your mind? What do you hear? What do you smell? Think about what you can taste. And what do you feel in your body? Focus on those sensations. Take a deep breath in and out. Okay, you can open your eyes. And that's a 5-minute vacation. Now, realistically, that was probably like a 25-second vacation for the sake of time, but you get the idea. So you really want to immerse yourself in that calming, peaceful memory. For me, it's any memory of the beach. So when I wake up in the middle of the night with my thoughts racing about all the things that I have to do the next day, if I'm not doing box breathing, I'm doing a 5-minute vacation, and I am remembering a girls' trip that I took to Wildwood, New Jersey with one of my best friends. And I'm thinking about sitting on that beach and the warmth of the sun on my skin, the smell of the salt air, the sound of the ocean, and there were kids playing in the distance, and I could hear them laugh. So I'm thinking about all of those things, and before I know it, I'm asleep. So the last section of the toolkit is I entitled Building Family Resilience. So caregiving responsibilities present challenges for the entire family. Um, and that makes building resilience important. Building resilience is done collectively and with intention. So this section provides practical strategies on how to strengthen family bonds and through the creation of small, meaningful routines that foster support, understanding, and adaptability. So really quickly, I want to go through each of these exercises and explain them. The first I call roses and thorns, and I didn't create that. I wish I did, but I didn't. It's simply highs and lows of the day, right? And what this does, you're imagine sitting around the dinner table, or you're picking your kids up from school, or sitting by your child's bedside and asking, okay, what was the best part of your day? What was the worst part of your day? So what was the rose? What was the thorn? And everybody does it, okay? Everybody participates in this exercise as a family. And what this does is it validates feelings, it encourages open communication, and strengthens emotional bonds. Now, I've been working with a group of teen girls for several years, and we routinely do this. Every time we get together, we do this exercise. And I can't tell you how close they have grown, as a group. I mean, you can imagine today's teens, it boggles my mind how today's teens don't talk about stuff. They don't talk about what's really going on. But this group of girls, they really talk about what's real and what's impacting them as a group and individually. And part of that, I think doing this exercise I attribute doing this exercise to that. So the next exercise is called Pockets of Happiness. And pockets of happiness are those consistent family rituals, those rituals that provide stability during times of uncertainty. This was really big for us as a family. There were so many things. We would wake up in the morning, and y'all know this. You wake up any given day, you don't know what you're going to get. You think you're going to go left and things go completely right on you or completely wrong. So for us, it was Thursday pizza nights. No matter what, it started when when my daughter was about 6 and my youngest was 3. Every Thursday was pizza night. And now, 12, 13 years later, every Thursday is still pizza night. I could call my 15-year-old in my office right now and ask her, what are we having for dinner tonight? And she's going to tell me pizza, because that's what we do on Thursday night. So those consistent family rituals. Another ritual we had is snow day cinnamon buns. And I don't know why I hemmed myself into this, but I would make my kids homemade cinnamon buns on the first snow day of the school year. So, and that is something that they've grown to expect. So when you have those types of rituals, things that they can just hang their hats on, it helps things feel stable and certain in times of uncertainty. Another thing we do, so y'all don't think everything revolves around food in our family, though a lot of it does, is on our children's birthdays, we fill their rooms with balloons. So it starts when they're toddlers and continues through their 18th birthday. So that's another thing that we do. Another tool for building family resilience is giving choices, giving age-appropriate choices. What this does is it builds confidence and a sense of self-control when so much is out of their control, right? And sometimes, giving choices, again, age-appropriate, can't emphasize that part enough. Sometimes it's the illusion of choice. Like when we're potty training our littles, you don't ask Johnny, do you want to use the potty? Instead, you ask Johnny, do you want to use the potty downstairs or upstairs? So he doesn't have a choice about whether or not he uses the potty, but he has a choice about where he uses the potty. So my husband calls that the illusion of choice. Another strategy is modeling emotions, showing healthy ways to manage emotions. You want to narrate your feelings for your kid and the respective coping strategy. So what that might look like is saying to your child, you know what? I am feeling really frustrated right now, so I'm going to go take a break. Mommy's going to take some space in her bedroom. So this teaches children that emotions are natural and they can be expressed safely. Like emotions are not things to be frightened of. So the next strategy would be practicing flexibility. And I have a confession. This was probably the hardest for me. I consider myself a reformed type A personality. So, and in practicing flexibility, you want to give yourself and your family permission to pivot and adjust plans when necessary. And I'm sure everyone on this call does that amazingly well. But I will have to say for me, when we first started this journey as a family, that was one of the hardest things for me because I have plans and contingencies for my contingencies. And sometimes there were days when I just had to throw it all out the window. And that was really, really tough. But what I will say is once I gave myself the permission to be flexible and to pivot, it resulted in so much less stress. So, and for our kiddos, what this does is it fosters a problem-solving mindset instead of one of perfectionism. So I want to leave you with this quote lastly. On the hardest days, remember, doing your best is enough. And you are enough. So, for most of us, parenting a child with medical complexity was not on our bingo card for sure. But you're here, you're doing it. And even though, some days it might not be pretty, you are doing exactly what you need to be doing.
Thank you so much, Rhonda. Wow, that is remarkably helpful, and I realize we have only scraped the surface of all that is available in that Resilient Parenting Toolkit. Those of you watching can get access to the Resilient Parenting Toolkit by visiting Rhonda's website. You can sign up there. That website is delivered with this video, either if you're receiving it by email or in the comments underneath on YouTube. You can find access to Rhonda's practice and these resources that she has made available. And thank you so much, Rhonda, for your investment in the community here at CureJM. And Suzanne, to you for coordinating so much of the great mental health work that has become an integral component of our foundation's work with JM families. Coming up next month, we have Dr. Kaveh Ardalan, who will be presenting on tapering medications, some insights for how best practices for tapering, when and why some medications need to be tapered and others can just be stopped when we are done with them. That'll be an insightful session, no doubt, and you can sign up at the link below this video to participate, to register for that town hall that's coming up. Also, please know space is now getting limited for the Cure JM Family Conference. That's happening in Chicago the 27th to the 29th of June. There's a lot connected to that conference and a great city to take your family to and enjoy some time before the conference starts on that weekend, on that Friday, the 27th of June. We are in the middle of walk season here at Cure JM. There are Walk Strong events happening all around the country over the next few months, and we would love for you to participate. If you see on this map a walk that is in your region, you can find more details there at curejm.org/Walk Strong to figure out the details for a Walk Strong event happening near you. Last thing I want to make you aware of is this remarkable opportunity, these scholarships that are available for Cure JM patients who are now getting an undergrad degree or a graduate degree. It is a $2,500 scholarship, and we're offering 3 of those. The deadline is looming. May the 10th of 2025 is the deadline for this set of scholarships. So if you're watching this video before May 10th, just go to curejm.org/advocate scholarship to find out more details on how you can participate. That's all for now. We'll see you next month with Dr. Kaveh Ardalan. Thank you for participating in the April 2025 Cure JM Town Hall.